corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Headline caught my attention. Republicans increasingly critical of major institutions. I'm going, really? You mean like the one they tried to tear down on January 6th? Yeah, I'm going, yeah, no kidding on that. And it was one of these things where I wanted to see what they were talking about. So I looked at the Pew Research poll that they had done. And these are facts from about a year ago that they had looked into. I guess they just got around to analyzing the data. And I guess it makes sense that based on the policies that you see Republicans pushing in legislatures across the country, based on what you're seeing happening, it makes sense that yes, Republicans are big on churches. Yes, they're still, half of them still think banks are good, but souring on corporate America. Really, really hate big tech companies, hate the entertainment industry, education on any front, sour, and unions soured. And this is one of those things where, look, most of the people I know who are union members, because the unions have done such a really good job of fighting for superior wages, and they have such a good standard of living, they think they're Republicans. This is one of those things that, goes back to the Harry Truman days. These are people who think, hey, I make money, so now I can vote like a Republican. And only to find out that they're the target of a lot of the policies. And that's been true for the last 45 years. Not that Democrats haven't helped. There is a lot of truth in that. But I'm looking at this and I'm going, the narratives are true. The stereotypes are actually fairly consistent. That Democrats are big on unions and big on education because we want smart people. We want people who are smart enough to think for themselves, to organize, and we believe in unions. Yeah, absolutely. Really not keen on corporate America. Really not keen on the big banking institutions, and not overly big on organized religion. And that kind of makes sense. But again, I go back to this headline, Republicans critical of major institutions. And then you go and you read the subheadline, which is Democrats more likely than Republicans to express positive views of major institutions. I'm going, I'm uncomfortable with that. Because to be honest, I don't have really great views of corporate America. I don't have great views of what we see coming out of Hollywood. I don't see great things coming out of the tech centers. And this is where I think liberals, I think progressives, I think Democrats need to not be this kind of reflexive kind of, if they're for it, we've got to be against it. If they're against it, we've got to be for it. And I've seen this play out in arguments that people have had. And one of them pops into my head is, on The View, you had that Michelle Tafoya going on and talking about the Uyghurs and China and our trade policies. And because she was right, I would not have been arguing with her. I would have been agreeing with her. That's an area we go, yeah, as crazy as you are, Michelle Tafoya, as crazy as your politics are, as crazy as you're positioning yourself, congratulations, blind squirrel, you doth found the nut. But no, Joy Behar and Whoopi, no. And they immediately had to get on the defensive and take the other side. And this is where I think our communications, we got to listen a little bit more. and understand what it is we're for and what it is we're against. And so I see this and I'm going, I'm distrustful of big institutions, of big overarching anything. And what's interesting to me is how the Republican numbers have actually fallen off where I thought they would be. And I actually thought that Republicans would be much more in favor of big banks and big corporations, corporate America. That was the shocking part of all of it. Everything else held to my already preconceived beliefs. Republicans against public education, against universities and colleges, and all of that, against higher ed. Because we don't need no stinking education, because you only need one book. That's right. You can learn math from the Bible, as we're finding out. Evidently, no math book is going to be pure enough, except evidently the one that has been that's owned by the company that's owned by the Carlyle Group, which was run by the former CEO who is now governor of Virginia. But that's a whole nother story. But here's the part where my mind goes. The polling is interesting. That only 30% of Republicans have a positive view of big corporations. This common ground. Here's an opportunity to rein in huge corporate power. This could be the beginning of bringing people back to the curb. Because look, I don't think the Koch brothers, who I blame a lot of our divisions on, I don't think the billionaire class really planned on the Republican Party turning on them. I don't. And you go, but what are you talking about, Rick? They're not turning on them. I'm looking at what's going on in Florida. The fact that out of pure spite, Ron DeSantis and the Republican legislature down there just moved forward to strip Disney of their special status as their own kind of governance, their own kind of town, their own special entity. Now understand, this is going to hurt Florida in a number of ways. It's going to hurt them pretty significantly because right now, how it's set up, and you could agree or disagree, I'm not so fond of it, so I don't care either way. But how it's set up right now is, Disney is its own entity. It takes care of all of its own municipal waste. It takes care of its own road work. It takes care of everything a city has to do. It does. It takes care of everything. Evidently now, by pulling this special status away, this will all be absorbed by the different local counties and the different municipalities who are now going to be responsible for all of the services. They're going to be responsible for all of the stuff that Disney now takes care of. And this is going to be at a huge expense, or it's not going to be done. And what's going to happen, you're going to get crummy service. And what does that mean? That means nobody's going to want to go there. That means nobody's going to want to show up because who knows how bad things get. Now, if I'm Disney and they're going to fight this, you gotta imagine they're going to, because they've got billions invested. I would put out a press release going, you know what? We're going to decide within the next 8 months whether we're moving to somewhere else. We're going to start talking with other states. I'll bet you Alabama would sell you the entire state for a couple of $1 billion. I'll bet you could get Alabama or Mississippi really cheap. And I don't know that you'd want it, to be honest, because Florida, that whole region, because climate change is real. There are going to be real effects, and Disney's kind of in that place where in down the road could all be underwater anyway. So this could be a kind of a good move to go. Maybe we do need to move somewhere a little bit further north out of this. Out of this place that could be out of water and could be a good leverage point. But what this shows me is, hey, corporate America is no longer their buddies, and look what they'll do. This is the dog that will bite the hand that feeds them. This is how far they've gotten off the chain. This is how far this party has gone off the rails, and I gotta wonder if the Kochs and the moneyed interests who've been prodding them and pushing them and going, go ahead, go destroy government, get your rabid base all fired up to destroy, get the crazy of the crazy elected. I gotta wonder if this isn't that moment where the business roundtable then goes, hold on, whoa, wait a minute. Whoa. It's one thing when you're busting up those unions. It's one thing when you're going after those people. But hey, you're coming after us. Can't have that. You're going after the money. I gotta wonder. You look at Texas, for instance. We're now going to be able to put a price tag on what Abbott's doing there in Texas with his. Who knows why he's stopping every truck? Oh, that's right, to make Joe Biden look bad. But they're saying right now the delays at the border because of DeSantis deciding he's going to stop every single truck and make sure that every wheel seal, every bearing, every brake is in adjustment, make sure every marker light works, make sure every trailer is sealed. It's already cost us, just in this short period of time, nearly $9 billion in domestic product. Which means, your strawberries and your produce are going to cost more. That's what that means. And the question becomes, when does the Republican Party find sanity? And I think it only finds sanity when the moneyed interests look at these kind of things and go, okay, now you've gone too far. You're screwing with the money. You're screwing with business. We can't have that. So have they gone too far now? Especially with this thing with Disney. This is a big thing. I know it's just retaliation. I know they're just angry and throwing a temper tantrum like a 2-year-old in a cereal aisle. I get this. But this has major consequences for the Sunshine State because, look, Disney is a major tourist attraction. If you now create an environment where there's doubt of safety, where there's doubt of quality, where there's now going to be multiple municipalities gouging you for revenue at every turn, it's going to get really interesting really quick. And I got to wonder about the transit system. Because the one thing that I remember when we were down there, we took the kids down a couple of years ago. The transit system ran on time, all the time, often. It was fabulous, and I remember at the time, saying, if we could get public transit like this across the country, nobody would need a car. We could solve our climate problems by getting people out of their cars and into transit like this. Because every 15 minutes there was a bus, there was a train, you were moving. They got you going from place to place to place, and you didn't have to park, you didn't have to pay for parking, you didn't have to do anything. You got to wonder if you got multiple counties now having to have authorities and multiple people with their hands in the pot, multiple bits of corruption. Look, I'm not saying there's no corruption now. Sure, there's plenty of it, but there's just one corrupt guy at the top, I'm sure. Now what do you do? I'm going to be paying attention to this. And why is Florida doing this? Because there might be a book somewhere that somebody might trip over that might say something about, somebody loving somebody. Crazy times we live in. Crazy times. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. You got thoughts, questions, comments? I got answers. Give us a call. Also, make sure you never miss a moment of the show. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Take the program on the go. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people from the top. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible, 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So, evidently, and this is one of those things, history just kind of repeating itself. And we've been, yesterday we talked about the Ludlow Massacre and how things seem to, keep popping up. You had the gun thugs and the National Guard in Colorado shooting into tent colonies, basically, going after and killing people in tent colonies, and doing it under the cover of law because they're nobody anyway. And yet, now you got Tennessee going, hey, you know what? We're going to criminalize people sleeping on the side of the road in tent colonies. You got CEOs like Howard Schultz going, we're under attack, using very, very violent language. We're being terrorized by those unions. We got to act. Just kind of like, John D. Rockefeller going, hey, don't care if we kill a couple of them. Yeah, it's worth doing. The more things change, the more they stay the same, which is why I thought it was really scary to see the fact that Amazon is evidently using Pinkertons to do some union busting and surveillance of Amazon workers. So the Pinkertons have a long, long history of being gun thugs and toughs for corporate America. Not a good sign. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Alice on line 1. Alice, how are you today?
I'm okay. How are you?
Oh, not bad. What's on your mind?
Well, I wanted to tell you. I've been wanting to say this for days, but I got sidetracked. The insanity of the right. Let's just go back to the basics. The very first, the Mayflower people were pilgrims. The Pilgrims were not Puritans. The Puritans came later, and they actually turned on the Pilgrims because they were not pure enough for them, and they literally started banishing them, putting them in stocks, cutting their ears off, branding them, so on and so forth. So my whole point is, you have the right now who wants to go back to this basic Puritanism, and their thing was, the haunting fear that somewhere someone might be happy. Forget that. But when you are taken over by people like this, they're going to turn on you. Yep. And that's what they're doing with these wealthy corporations who have up to this point given them money but now, they're not following the pure thing of the Republican Party. So I'm just looking forward to more insanity just like this. I think they'll be going after more corporations.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the dog has caught the car, and now we know that the dog is going to eat the car.
Yep. So it's going to get real interesting. I'm just going to sit back with my popcorn and go, okay, let's see who wins this one.
Yeah, but the sad reality is while that's going on, we see some horrible legislation moving across states, and we've got a bunch of dim-witted voters who keep voting for these people because too many of us stay home. And this is why if you're not registered to vote in this moment, today would be a good time to go online, find your local voter registration department and get registered and promise me you're going to vote.
Oh, I agree with you. The only way that we're going to put this nonsense under control is the sane people are going to have to come out. But you have a good evening.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate it. As always, great stuff. Look, this is where you look at all of the messaging and all of the stories and all of the things that are going on. And it's really taking us back, horrible times. I mean, I look at the Pinkerton story. I saw that and I'm going, really? Amazon. I mean, the message that sends, we're bringing in the Pinkertons. We're going to bring in the union busters because that's the message. And of course, everyone, at least I hope everyone, when you think Pinkerton, you think the Homestead strike in Pennsylvania back from 1892. You think that they had the hundreds of gun thugs that they brought in on a barge. That those workers were in the gun battle. I think it was almost 3 days. It was a couple of days if I remember right. And because they were trying, Frick and Carnegie were trying to bring in these thugs to break this strike. And ultimately what happened is they sent in the National Guard and they crushed it anyway. Because that's what corporate power got us. A government that was decidedly on the side of corporate America. We're in an interesting moment now with a DeSantis. Now, I have no doubt that in a strike situation, he's going to send out his secret police. He's going to send out his election police, his National Guard, whoever he can to put a strike down, to crush it if he can. But what about corporate America? I mean, this Disney thing's really, really an interesting moment. Now, for me, this is an opportunity. This really is an opportunity to reach out to the few sane, rational Republicans that may be left. Now you go, Rick, come on. There are none of those left. And there may not be. But there may be some people, and I've had these conversations with folks who go, maybe things are getting a little crazy. I like Trump because of blah, 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 blah. And most of the people that I know, the working class people that I know, it comes to the stuff we talk about here every night. It comes back to the jobs. He was going to recreate the 1950s. We were going to recreate company, factory towns. We were going to bring back union jobs. That Leave It to Beaver existence that we were led to believe that was our birthright. That if we just showed up, we were going to do our job. We put in the 40 years, get the gold watch, have a secure retirement, have a good, solid life. It ain't playing that out that way for most people. Sadly, when the town lost the factory, what filled the void of that factory as it crumbled were crumbling families, crumbling infrastructure, chemical abuse, alcohol abuse. You name it. Bad stuff. And this is where I keep saying, Democrats, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to be unabashedly pro-worker. This is a moment to say, look, we're not pushing an adversarial relationship with corporate America. We're pushing a pro-worker agenda. We want workers to have a voice. We want workers to share in the profits. We want workers to be able to partner with. We want them to have a say in what gets done. You don't have to butt heads, but if you choose to, that's your prerogative. You can be Howard Schultz and say he's anti-union and all that. But you can also say, look, this is about making your company better and stronger. Because what we know union companies have a much lower turnover rate. Because workers want to stay and earn the wage that they're earning. You would think corporate America could figure that out. But there's an opportunity here, and I'm hoping the DNC and the Democratic leadership, hoping they seize the moment. And that comes back to us, pushing, calling, emailing, writing, doing all that stuff. Just my thoughts. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1967. That was the day the Taylor Law went into effect in New York State. It was celebrated for granting public employees the right to organize and elect union representation. But it's also roundly criticized for stripping public sector workers of their right to strike. It was crafted and enacted in response to the militant, victorious New York City transit strike of January 1966. The Taylor Act amended key points of the 1947 Condon-Wadlin Act, which first prohibited public sector strikes in the aftermath of a teacher strike in Buffalo. But strikes persisted, and the act was seen as largely unenforceable. In the aftermath of the 1966 transit strike, New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller appointed a committee chaired by labor relations professor George Taylor to make, quote, proposals for protecting the public against the disruptions of vital public services by illegal strikes, while at the same time protecting the rights of public employees. In addition to granting the right to organize, the Taylor Act also establishes impasse procedures for dispute resolution, defines and prohibits improper practices, prohibits strikes by public employees, and established the Public Employment Relations Board. But public sector unions argue the law gives no incentive for employers to settle disputes or negotiate contracts in a timely manner or in good faith. While public sector unions have struck since its enactment, Transport Workers Union 100 was subjected to harsh fines in both the 1980 and 2005 transit strikes. During the 2005 walkout, TWU 100 was issued a $1 million a day penalty, its automatic dues collection was suspended, and its leader Roger Toussaint was jailed for 10 days. The union continues to push for changes to the law. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
What is so supreme about the Supreme Court? I mean, besides being housed in an imposing marble building, being the final stop on America's judicial train, and having its 9 members look photogenically authoritarian in those full-body black robes. And yes, its existence is written into the Constitution, but so is Congress, and no one thinks of it as anything supreme. We 330 million Americans are told we must obey the law as defined by a half-dozen unelected lawyers on this court. Why should we democratic citizens do that? After all, these legalistic elites have no actual power to force their personal beliefs on us. There's no Supreme Court army. In fact, their sole source of power is one that is intangible, extremely fragile, and easily frittered away: public trust. We should go along with their rulings only if they appear to be fair and honest, not based on personal whim or partisan ideology, and not meant to extend plutocratic power over the people. As Justice Elena Kagan rightly put it, the only way we can get people to do what we think they should do is because people respect us. That's where the present majority of far right-wing appointees have failed so abjectly. Rather than meeting a lofty standard of judiciousness, all 6 have pulled the court down into the mire of crass Republican politics. They've corrupted the system and jiggered the law to decree that corporate campaign cash is free speech, that the state can take over women's bodies, that the Republican Party can unilaterally shut millions of voters out of America's voting booths, and so awful much more that enthrones the few over the many. This is Jim Hightower saying, respect? Trust? The Republican court is already down to 40% public approval rating, having surrendered its legitimacy to be a governing authority over us.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So evidently Dumb Jr. is supposed to meet with the House Select Committee sometime in the coming days, according to ABC News. And I'm like, what exactly do they think they're going to get from Dumb Jr.? I got to wonder, would they have told him anything? And does he know anything? And the other side of this, is he going to answer anything? Will he sit and plead the fifth the entire time? And can we have this on pay-per-view? I want to see all of why can't we see these testimonies? Even if it's like, have it and then, put it on later. I want to see these testimonies. I want to see what these people are saying. I don't want to see bits and pieces. I want to be able to see it all. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, I got to wonder what the dumb junior testimony is going to look like. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on that, this whole bunch of whatever else we can grab. I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us. Sarah is a fabulous reporter over at Raw Story, rawstory.com, where you find her incredible reporting. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, happy Thursday.
So what do you think? What do you think Dumb Jr. is going to bring to the table? Do you think he's going to plead the fifth? Do you think he's going to try and answer? What are we expecting, do you think?
Boy, I hope he pleads the fifth. You remember, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how everything that is happening in the January 6th investigation and everything that they do with Congress can then be used by the DOJ. This is a perfect example of why. If he pleads the fifth to the January 6th committee, then that can be brought up to the grand jury. And that'll be a lovely gift, I think, for everybody to be like, well, here's the question that we asked Dumb Jr., he pleaded the fifth. Here's the question, he pleaded the fifth again. So I think that'll be the fun part of that we get out of this.
So this is why you're getting Kushner, and this is the reason you got Ivanka. This is the reason that you've already got all of these other people, and now Dumb Jr. is the last one to walk into the room.
I think so, because he was at the rally. He was in that VIP tent. We saw him filming everything, and he was, coordinating with all the same people, just the same as Eric was. So it would be very interesting to see what the idiot is willing to say or not say.
Yeah, but didn't Eric plead the fifth?
Yeah. Well, he did, but I think the one you're thinking about is the one where he testified for like 10 hours and he pleaded the fifth for the whole time, like something like 70 bazillion.
Yeah, like 500 times.
Yeah. That I think was in the New York case.
Okay, that was different. That's right. But
he did testify. I thought he did testify to the committee, and I thought that he did plead the fifth a lot, but I don't remember how long that hearing or how long he spoke to them. Yeah, I know that Kimberly Guilfoyle spent the day. So
now the big story yesterday was Alex Jones is shopping an immunity agreement for his testimony. And do you think this matters? Do you think if he gets the immunity that he's seeking, that he then spills the beans and says everything? Because, there's part of me that goes, he was kind of instrumental in a lot of areas. He was kind of the conduit between all of the extreme groups, the Proud Boys, and all of the radical groups that were, on the fringe. And I think he's the conduit to the money. A lot of the fringe money, because evidently the woman who owns Publix, I guess from what's been reported, she gave him a boatload of money to do this stuff. For me, that's what I want to know. I want to know who funded all this stuff. Those are the people we need to be exposing.
And I know that that's something that the DOJ has been poking around at. So that is a good piece of this to know. I think with Alex Jones, I think he's kind of in a situation where he's just financially screwed because he has been sued so much and he owes so many millions of dollars to this point that obviously he's filed for bankruptcy. If he ends up in, at the January 6th committee and then ends up having to defend himself in a grand jury investigation, that's going to be a lot of money in lawyers' fees. Donald Trump's not going to pay that for him. So if you're already filing for bankruptcy and you have a whole other trial and a couple of other things to deal with and you're not going to even be able to afford lawyers, it's going to be a problem. So the smartest thing that he could do is cop a plea and be like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. Here, please take all of the information out of my brain and use it however you wish.
Yeah, because you can only sell whatever beet juice he's selling to the minions so much to be able to fund this stuff. Because the whole empire, evidently, unless he stashed a bunch of money is being reported into his kid's name and stuff like that. But you can only stash so much before they find it. Because, look, the entire empire going away. And I remember a couple of years ago, and it's probably been 8 or 9 years. I had like a half an hour with him, where we were at a talkers convention where he was getting the Freedom of Speech Award from the talkers industry, and what they really wanted to know is how he had built his model to cash in. Because they were all trying to figure out how he was bilking the internet to make money, and he wasn't letting into any of that. But what I found most interesting, and I always thought he was kind of a charlatan, is we had a very lucid conversation. He seemed like a decent guy, very affable. We were talking about a wide range of things. To use the old George Bush frame, decent guy, somebody you wouldn't mind having a beer with. But the second he took the stage, he went from zero to insaniac within the blink of an eye. And you go, it's all a shtick. I do believe that over the years, that shtick that was the guy I met has turned into some mental illness and some real problems. And I think that's kind of where he's gotten to. It's no longer a shtick that I thought it was back then. I think he believes his own press and his own BS.
Maybe. I remember, though, whenever he was in his divorce case, one of the main things that he said in that case was the whole persona, his entire thing that he creates for his show is all an act. Like, he admitted it on the record in court, and everybody just kind of was like, oh, okay. Like, nobody really, this was sort of a time whenever there was a different news story every hour, and we were just under this fire hose of stuff. And that has always stuck with me with Alex Jones. It makes me wonder, at what point is this no longer financially advantageous for you to keep playing this character? But it's the same kind of thing that people have said about Glenn Beck for decades now, that his whole thing is an act. And I don't know about Alex Jones. Maybe he's taken too many of his erectile dysfunction pills that he's selling. Who knows? Maybe that just eats your brain at some point.
It's the same thing that they say about Fox News. It's all entertainment. There's no news there. It's, it is what it is. You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Sarah Burris, reporter at Raw Story, rawstory.com. If you want to check out her work, we'll get links out on social media so you can see this stuff. Now, you've written some great pieces following January 6th and some of the characters involved. And Mike Lee is one of those characters. We saw the text messages. We've seen some of the stories coming out about that. Lee's an interesting character in all this because he's one of those guys who for years was lecturing us about the Constitution and lecturing us about how much he loves the country. And, this is one of those moments where you go, no, just shut the blank up. Never want to hear you again. None of you Tea Party idiots who ran around with the pocket Constitution saying, I love the Constitution. None of you can say that anymore because clearly you didn't read the book.
And what's crazy is you see the contrast between him and Mitt Romney, and that they represent the exact same state, the exact same constituents, and how incredibly different they are, particularly when it comes to January 6th. Not that Mitt Romney is this, paragon of virtue with his dog on top of his car, but, at the same time, like, you're looking at Mike Lee thinking, you've been lecturing us on constitutionality and all of this, that we should give Trump a chance, and he's been playing that sort of innocent middle of the road card when basically we find out all of the stuff that he's been texting Mark Meadows is, I'm on your team. Here's everything, that you possibly could need to show the world that I'm with you. And I was a little bit shocked that he both was willing to go that far, but I think too that he was, that he didn't expect any of that to come out. Like that stuff, when you put stuff like that in writing, I think we all should know at this point, like, if you're going to text message people, if you're going to email people, like, that's going to be subpoenaed. They're going to find it.
No, this is the thing about the entire January 6th that is most amazing to me. Because all of these people videotaped their treason. These are people who had no concept of what they were doing. And this is where, I think their argument is valid. They believed that they were patriots. They were sold on the idea by Trump that they were going to be pardoned, that they were patriots doing the right thing. I buy the argument. Now, again, you can sell me on the argument that I'm Robin Hood and I can go to the bank and rob the bank and give it out to the homeless people. It's still not going to keep me out of jail. But you can make the argument, and some people might be sympathetic, but not going to keep me out of jail. But I listen, and I might agree that people went there and they believed that they were fighting the good fight. They believed all of the outrage candy that the chaos merchants on blathering right-wing radio kept feeding them, that the country's under attack. Joe Biden learned coding during the pandemic and stole the election. If you're dumb enough to buy all that stuff, he's dumb, but he learned coding and how to hack into every computer to steal election just for himself, but the Republicans won all these other seats. If you're dumb enough to buy that, but still think that, all this other stuff, I don't know how we help you.
Yeah, I agree. There's something about just the amount of information that these people were sharing. I read through, I think it was like a 300-page document of all of these WhatsApp messages and all of this stuff between these people, a recording of the phone call that the Proud Boys had to organize, and it really does sort of sound like the kind of excuses that a lot of the Nazis at Nuremberg were giving. I was just following orders. I was just I thought this was what I was supposed to do. I thought that, I was working for my country, all of these things that, it didn't really work then. And it doesn't make you a good person now. It just makes you a criminal with, an excuse that maybe your mother can live with. Maybe.
That's an excellent point. Now, I understand Donald Trump's filed a lawsuit against Hillary Clinton. And I'm okay with this. Look, I've been saying for the longest time, and I'm one of the few on the left who've been calling for an investigation into 2016. I want to know all of the things that the right keeps saying. We need to investigate Hillary. We need to know about the emails, and I think you're right. I think we need to know what James Comey was doing. Why a couple of days before the election he put his thumb on the scale. I think we need to know where the emails went. Why Russia only hacked the DNC, and did they hack the RNC, and what information? I think we need to do a full-scale investigation into all of this. I think more information is good and better. I don't want to just focus on one thing. Let's find out what really happened. But by Trump doing this, don't we open up to a lot of discovery on things he did too?
Yes, and that is the best part about this lawsuit. The first piece of it is that basically whenever you sue somebody, that means that you basically, you're entitled to ask for all of the same documents that they're asking for. So I think that's basically great. That opens up the window for Fusion GPS and Sussman and all of these people to be like, oh, hey, I'm going to need to see all your documents on Don Jr.'s meeting at Trump Tower or whatever. The second piece of this that I didn't even think about until this week, when I think it was Mark Elias and Fusion's GPS filed court documents where they were saying basically like the Fusion GPS was like, oh, hey, we retained this law firm as our lawyers. So everything that you want, I'm so sorry that's actually privileged. It's attorney-client privilege, so sorry. I think that's really funny. It's not something that clearly they thought of. But the idea of attorney-client privilege is not only the communications between you and your lawyer, but on the presumption that there could be a lawsuit, then it also applies. And so all of that stuff, it's just like, oh, burn. Sucks to be you guys. I'll be interested to see how that works out in court, because I know Trump's side is going to argue against that. But when it comes to decisions like that, very rarely are judges willing to eliminate attorney-client privilege like that. So it'll be fun to watch.
No, and here's the thing, I was not a huge Hillary fan, and I'll be quite honest about it. I voted for her. I wasn't a huge fan. because I wasn't a huge Bill fan. And you know, this is one of those things. I mean, you know, maybe it's partially, you know, sexism on my part. I saddled her with a lot of the same baggage that I wasn't a Bill Clinton fan. NAFTA was horrible. The telecom bill '96 was horrible. Welfare reform was horrible. The end of Glass-Steagall was terrible. He attacked unions pretty heavily. Went in certain ways. I mean, he did some other good things, and I'm not going to discredit that. Didn't get strike replacement, but again, that's Bob Dole's fault for filibustering it. You know, there's a lot of give and take. He was less bad than George H.W. Bush would have been. So, you know, that's the reason I voted for him. But, you know, she wasn't, you know, a fire breathing, hey, we're going to undo NAFTA. You know, she was better around the edges. She was still worlds better than Donald Trump, and I voted for her with a clear conscience. But she was right. I mean, the more we go back to that 2016 election cycle, and the more you read what she said at the time, holy blankety blank blank, she was blankety blank blank spot on.
I know.
You know,
so
she
crazy.
was, you know, and maybe part of the reason I think people didn't like her is she was so smart. She was so right on that she was the smart kid in the class that everyone's like, just sit down. Maybe that's part of it too, but she was right. Everything she said, damn it, she was right.
Remember the like first scene in the first Harry Potter movie when Ron and Harry are talking smack about Hermione because she's the one who always raises her hand. She always knows the answer. That's kind of how I feel like Hillary Clinton was in 2016. The thing about after working for the State Department is she clearly knew everything about Russia and Putin and all of the stuff that they were doing.
Yeah.
They were really just starting up this cyber game in those years. And so she had to have been read in on all of that intelligence stuff. Because
shockingly, here's the reason, and I remember saying this back in 2015 and 2016. One of the reasons I said that you have to vote for her back then was she, unlike George W. Bush, and unlike we knew Trump was never going to do it, and he didn't, she's actually going to read the presidential daily briefings. She's actually going to do the job. She's actually going to read the material that's prepared for her. She's actually going to know what's in all of this and be prepared. And I think 4 years of the former guy showed he flew by the seat of his pants. He was prepared for nothing, and it showed.
And not only that, I don't think he actually cared to even be prepared. Like, that's a bigger thing to me, is if you care, you know, and you're trying, then that'll get you, you know, a little bit of the way, right? Yeah. But you don't even care. Come on, man.
Yeah, I'm with you. I got to get your thoughts on this. You've got a piece about oil and oil prices. You know, I've seen the stickers, you know, Joe Biden did this because, you know, the jingo is, you know, all of the, and look, you know, it's brilliant. It really is brilliant idiocy. They could put, you know, stickers on gas pumps going, look, Joe Biden did this. Joe Biden didn't do this. ExxonMobil did this. Shell did this. Yeah. Chevron did this. BP did this. But interesting that you got a story on the U.S. for the first time in, you know, a long while, major exporter of oil. We're sending the oil at a time when we're paying record gas prices. We're sending it out of the country.
Yeah. And I mean, there have been a couple of people, some of the Biden administration has talked about this, but a whole lot of people who talk about corruption and big business and corporate greed have been talking about how awful the oil companies are. And basically they're jacking up prices because they can.
Yep.
And we learned this week that we have now exported the most amount of oil that we ever have, ever in the history of the United States. U.S. oil is being sold elsewhere at a time when we could be using that oil here at home and paying a heck of a lot less. But why would they do that when they could make more money selling it for $3 more a gallon in Europe? It makes more sense to them. It's a better business idea for them. So what do they care?
There you go. Finally, I saw interesting story that you've got, and I saw this on the day that it happened. I don't know when Ben Shapiro turned black. Maybe he identifies as black. I've never seen him identify as black. But when did Newsmax do something to change his face as somewhat black? And did Herman Cain did he rise from the dead, or is he just a zombie now?
So what happened here is bless their hearts, right? This is one of the biggest bless their hearts I can think of this year. Newsmax decided to do a segment on Black conservatives, and they only 4 people they could think of was Herman Cain, who's dead, Ben Shapiro,
who's white,
and then who's white, and Carson, and who's the other guy? I can't remember the other guy.
It wasn't.
Clark, Sheriff Clark, who's not even a sheriff anymore. And that's just like, man, I'm not even conservative. I'm not even, close to these people. And I know more conservatives than they do. Just the fact alone that poor Tim Scott wasn't on the list. Like, he's the only Black Republican U.S. Senator in the entire U.S. Senate. Mia Love, right, who was in Congress and was a huge Trump supporter until she no longer was a Trump supporter and now is on CNN. We see Candace Owens make fun of herself, make a fool out of herself every week. Like, come on, people. How do you not know who these people are? So it's just 3 dudes and one of them is white. And that's all Newsmax has got. And I'm flabbergasted. That's just a slacker right there. Like, you're not even trying anymore.
Maybe the only thing I can think of is maybe they didn't have photos laying around. They didn't have a picture handy. They didn't have.
Feel free to come to our website. All of our photos are Creative Commons because they are. So there's a lot of Candace Owens photos that are Creative Commons, thanks in large part to that Arizona dude who takes pictures.
There you go.
All the time.
Good stuff, Sarah. As always, appreciate the time. Fabulous stuff.
Thank you so much. Have a good weekend.
You as well, our good friend Sarah Burris. Rawstory.com. Check out her work. As always, amazing. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
That is such a great story. You gotta. And the other thing we didn't get to, I wanted to bring it up is, on Easter, we had, over the Easter weekend, we had a couple of shootings. South Carolina, we talked about. Here in Pennsylvania, we talked about. And, we got policymakers who don't even care. I mean, shootings again, as I said, earlier in the week. We're back to business as usual. Because you got a shooting a day, it's okay. We're back. Pandemic must be over. Pandemic must be over. But the thing with the oil exports, you go, maybe you can justify it by going, hey, we're just helping out the other countries because they need the energy. But all-time record of shipping oil out of the country. And she hit the important part, because in Europe, gas prices are like double what ours are. And you wonder why they're cashing in. You wonder why their profits are so high, because they're gouging the hell out of us. But again, it's all Joe Biden's fault. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something in your mind, do that. Also, grab the podcast wherever you get your podcasts or at thericksmithshow.com. It's always there for you, always available. Quick break, right back with Hour 2. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
I got nowhere to go now. I got no house. I got no nothing.
Catastrophic rains and floods kill hundreds in South Africa.
I'm here today because homegrown biofuels have a role to play right now.
Biden waives summer ban on ethanol to combat high gas prices. Plus, the climate crisis is supercharging hurricane rainfall.
All of those super stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
You will never hear a Republican who complains about how much we have to pay for gasoline ever complain about Jared Kushner getting $2 billion in oil profit money from Saudi Arabia.
Well, that's because they don't actually care about gas prices, and they're jealous of Jared. Now, what was that whole thing about $10,000 and Hunter Biden again? This is your Green News Report.
$2 billion in oil profit money from Saudi Arabia.
Okay, Desi Doyen, the climate crisis devastation continues, doesn't it?
Yes, unfortunately it does. Rescue and evacuation operations are underway in Durban, South Africa, after days of torrential rains and floods washed away roads and bridges and destroyed homes and vital infrastructure, killing at least 300 people. Oh. This latest weather disaster comes not long after other parts of southern Africa were devastated by 5 powerful tropical storms in just 6 weeks earlier this year. In a new study out this week, scientists from the World Weather Attribution Project, which analyzes the influence of climate change on extreme weather events, confirmed that climate change made those storms more intense and damaging.
Gosh, I wish we had more studies on all of this.
Climate change also made the record-breaking 2020 Atlantic hurricane season even worse. A new study in Nature Communications finds clear evidence that ocean warming is driving Atlantic hurricanes to produce more rainfall and to become more intense. This was the first study to look at an entire hurricane season rather than just single storms. The researchers found that during the entire record season of 30 named storms, human-caused global warming supercharged hourly rainfall rates in tropical storms and hurricanes by as much as 11%. One researcher warned, quote, "This isn't an end-of-the-century thing that we have to worry about. We actually have to prepare our coastlines for the changes in these storms now."
What, because climate change is happening right now?
Yes, that's exactly what he means. In other news, the spike in U.S. gasoline prices and other fossil fuel commodities, caused in part by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, are a key reason that domestic inflation is rising. To help lower gas prices, the Biden Environmental Protection Agency this week issued a temporary waiver to the Clean Air Act to allow gasoline known as E15, which is blended with 15% ethanol made from corn, to be sold in summer months to increase supply. The administration estimates that will bring down gas prices by about 10 cents per gallon where it is sold. Here's President Biden at an ethanol plant in Iowa.
Your family budget, your ability to fill up your tank, none of it should hinge on whether a dictator declares war and commits genocide half a world away.
Now, it's a win for farm state lawmakers, but the temporary waiver is controversial because burning E15 gas in summer months increases polluting smog, and it could encourage more fossil fuel consumption.
You know what else would help?
What?
Don't we have war profiteering laws on the books anymore? Sure would like to see some of those brought against big oil.
Well, high gas prices have political impacts for congressional Democrats who warn that if Republicans win control of Congress in the November midterm elections, that will effectively mean the end of U.S. climate policy.
Yeah, and maybe the end of democracy, but that's a whole different story.
Another major energy company is moving to exit Russia to stop funding the war on Ukraine.
Rexit?
Bloomberg News reports that Vitol Group, the world's largest independent oil trader, will stop trading Russian crude oil and products as its existing contracts expire by the end of this year and will not enter into any new transactions with Russia.
Good.
Some good news. Japanese car maker Honda announced this week it will try to catch up to other global car makers by pouring $40 billion into electrifying its lineup with the target of launching 30 EV models globally by 2030. And finally, the U.S. has hit a wind energy milestone. In the first week of April, wind power was the second largest source of electricity in the United States for the first time ever.
Nice.
That's according to the Federal Energy Information Administration. Wind energy edged out electricity generated by nuclear and coal in the nation's electricity mix, but still trailed behind natural gas.
I didn't even know we had a Federal Energy Information Administration.
And now you know.
For much more on all of those stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I was looking at a story over at the Daily Beast, and they've got satellite images that show mass graves outside the city of Mariupol. And you look at this, and it's heartbreaking. It's tragic. It's throw whatever word in there you want. It's a war. To me, it's war crimes. To me, this is angering. It's what you expect from a war criminal. And I think the president was right. I think Joe Biden was absolutely right. Vladimir Putin is a war criminal. The question is will the globe, will the rest of the world hold him accountable? Will there be any accountability for the just horrific bombardment of that country, the loss of life, the misery that's been caused, and again, we're seeing in real time the war crimes right before our eyes. And here to share some thoughts on what we're seeing, why we're seeing, and maybe what can be done in this moment. I've asked Trygve Olsen to come talk with us. Trygve is the principal at Viking Strategies, also a senior advisor to the Lincoln Project. Trygve, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it's great to be back.
I look at these satellite images that they've got over in this story at the Daily Beast, and these are people. I mean, it's easy to be detached. It's easy to go, these are just satellite images. You see from far away. You're not getting close-ups, but it's a massive space, rows and rows, and you go, these were people. These were people who had families. These are children. These are people who had lives who just, and for what? Just eliminated for what?
Yeah, I mean, I think you see these kinds of images, and when you see these kinds of images, for me personally, in a place that I've been, it's horrific. It's barbaric. It's the absolute worst of humanity. It's the side of man that lived in caves. I think the question, it's the age-old question from the beginning of time, right? Man has potential to do immense good for one another, kindness, love, all of those things. And you see those kinds of acts from humanity, and you see the worst of humanity. And Vladimir Putin is demonstrating himself to be right up there with Adolf Hitler, and Pol Pot is one of the worst people to probably ever populate the earth. It's genocide. And I think I think it was right that Joe Biden has spoken the truth on that, because to not call it that would be a politician who is just trying to soft sell it or not speaking truth, and people would know that, because anybody who looks at it, that is what they see.
No, I got to tell you, I look at Biden's polling numbers, and it's a tragedy that his polling numbers are where they are, and I think it's because of the divisive moment we are in our politics. But I think he has done the best job you could possibly have done in this moment, given what's going on, and the fact that you don't want to get us involved in World War III. You don't want that image of a Russian and an American at each other. So that you could sell it back home for Putin to begin, lobbing nukes this way. I'll tell you, I think he's done the best he can do. Am I wrong?
No, you're 100% right. And perhaps Joe Biden, given his entire history, was the right person for this moment, because I don't think that anybody else running on either side, and thank God Donald Trump isn't in office, because they'd probably be marching on bears. I think Joe Biden was the person with the background and experience and knowledge to unite our allies, to talk about it. Does Joe Biden sometimes get angry and speak truths that other politicians are better at holding their tongue? Yeah, absolutely. But in reality, I think there's something refreshing in this case. It's real leadership.
But that's what I like about Joe.
And real stakes.
That's what I've always liked about Joe Biden. I like a guy who's going to make a gaffe. I like the guy who's gonna speak off the cuff. I don't want someone who's reading a speech, and I've had people say, well, he can't give a speech, he can't read the teleprompter, he can't do this. And I go, that's not the Joe Biden I voted for. That's not the Joe Biden I want. I want that guy who's going to be down in the crowd, shaking hands, connecting with people. That's the guy. That's the guy I voted for. Not the person who's going to have the speech. He's not that guy. He's not Barack Obama. He's not Bill Clinton. He's not that great orator. He's a handshake guy. Yep,
he is. And my old boss long ago, Tommy Thompson in Wisconsin, used to always talk about, there are two kinds of politicians: those who wanted to be and those who wanted to do. And you could disagree with the guys who want to do things, but you had to respect them, even if they're on the other side, because you could cut deals with them and try and find common ground. And in this case, Joe Biden has been leading at incredibly serious times. I was saying, we were talking before we got on the air, and as I said to you, this is the biggest pickle that humanity has gotten himself in probably since the Cuban Missile Crisis. I mean, you have Vladimir Putin launching, testing nuclear missiles that, we haven't seen that kind of bravado that you're seeing on Russian state television, where they're talking about how they could wipe out New York City in, a long time. But here's the thing that, Rick, is we have a lot of politicians, and Joe Biden's not one of them, who are simply running to be pundits, and they're not serious. And we are now faced, as you see, those pictures coming out of Ukraine. You have to ask yourself, is this something serious? And it is serious. And when you see Putin doing these kinds of things, you have to ask yourself, would he be willing to do those to us? Because I'm telling you, as somebody who spent a lot of time in that part of the world working against those guys, he would be willing to do that if he thought he could.
The key there,
incredibly serious times. And
the key there is if he could. I mean, the thing that I guess gives me some solace is how badly they have bungled this. They've lost a quarter of their military to people who were basically throwing rocks at them. This is not
more
the
than rocks at him,
superpower.
in part thanks to Joe Biden, Rick.
Well, absolutely. I mean, but these are people who the stories at the beginning where they were making Molotov cocktails in their basement until all of the supplies could get there. This is not a highly trained military. Yes, we got them the missiles, we got them the shoulder rockets, we got them arms, we got them what we could get them, and they've taken it and they've fought valiantly But this was supposed to be the one of the top 2 or 3 militaries in the world, a superpower. I'll be honest, I had higher expectations.
Well, but that's kind of what makes the situation so dangerous, right? I mean, the truth is, Putin's military has exposed itself to being not top notch by any means. They're conventional military. So what he basically is he's a thug with a country the size that has an economy that's smaller than Italy, right? But he has nuclear weapons, and that's what he has.
Yeah.
And that's a serious problem, but it's one that thankfully we have somebody in Joe Biden who's a serious person and understands the seriousness of this and is dealing with it. Now let's contrast that to some of the other people who would like to be sitting in that office. And let's start with the governor of Florida and what he's doing. That's not serious. He's about to cost the taxpayers of Florida and the residents of Florida $1 billion if they revoke that the setup that Disney has operated under since 1967, and whether you think that's corporate welfare or not, and I obviously came out of the Republican side, but I think there's a fair amount of corporate welfare, and maybe that's an example of it. But nevertheless, what DeSantis is doing has nothing to do with that. It has to do with culture wars and a desire to run for president of the United States because he thinks he should be that. Does he have any idea what he would do about Putin? Would he be serious about the situation we face? Probably not any more serious than Donald Trump. Same with Greg Abbott. All of these guys, they're running to be pundit in chief, not commander in chief. And the good news with Joe Biden for the time being is we have somebody who's taking the responsibility of being commander in chief and leading basically the free world against a serious threat. But our politics, and we have an election getting closer every day, is filled with people who aren't being serious. You had 67 Republicans in the House, I think 63 or 67, who voted basically saying we shouldn't honor our NATO obligations. Well, one of the things that's always made America great is we are actually the exceptional nation that has honored our word to others. When, after World War II, we didn't occupy, we rebuilt, and we benefited from it. Our workers were able to sell products across Europe.
Yeah, it was 63, and you're right. I mean, that it's a shocking number, and I fear this election cycle, if the polling is right, that number gets much worse. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Trig V. Olson, principal at Viking Strategies, also a senior advisor over at the Lincoln Project. One of my go-to guys on Twitter that I follow for all things on this topic. Now, I see stories coming out of Finland. I see stories coming out of Sweden. In fact, Sweden right now, I guess. There's momentum now moving to get them to join NATO. Putin has said that for him it's a non-starter, that he would view, I guess, as an escalation, that this could be the start of, I guess, World War III, if I'm reading this right. Is this something that should be done, do you think?
I think Sweden and Finland, first of all, the fact that Sweden and Finland feel endangered enough that, given their histories, that they would say we want to be a part of NATO, says a lot about how they see the threat from right next door. Second of all, NATO has been an organization where if you meet the basic thresholds, you're a democracy, you're a capitalist society, etc. You have a rule of law, you have a military that meets the requirements, which Finland and Sweden certainly would. That you can apply to join. I do think it's a good idea in the sense that it creates a much more contiguous, if you look at a map, you see the Baltic states, Poland are in NATO, you have Sweden and Finland that aren't, Norway is. All of those things would make a lot of sense if they choose that that's what they want to do. I would say, Dmitry Medvedev, who was the president when Putin became prime minister and was still running the show, and then became the prime minister again. Dmitry Medvedev was saying, well, this will cause us to have to put nuclear weapons in the Baltic Sea region. Truth of the matter is there's very likely nuclear weapons in Kaliningrad, which is the enclave, if you look at a map, that's separate from Russia. So, it's just bluster. What's he going to do about it if they decide to do it? And furthermore, I would tell you the other thing about it is, Sweden and Finland are real countries. If Sweden and Finland wanted to have nuclear weapons, they could have them within a week, probably, right? They have the capacity. They have nuclear power plants. I think it would be better to have them folded in than creating their own security structures. And in essence, they already are, because the truth of the matter is, Russia isn't going to invade anybody at the moment. If they can't wipe out Ukraine, kind of to your point, are they really going to take on Finland, which has F-35s and all the rest? Probably not. So I think it's a good idea. But I think for Americans, it should tell you how serious the neighbors, those closer to the situation than us, are taking it, because they understand it. They live with it.
No, it's scary times. So how do we see this ending? I mean, I fear that it's become so normalized at this point that we're not outraged anymore. That we're spending most of our time focused on the shenanigans and nonsense of Republicans and the Republican legislatures, where we're spending time, talking about, Abbott and his shenanigans at the border, holding up trucks and causing our economy $9 billion. And as you pointed out, $1 billion it's going to cost the taxpayers of Florida with DeSantis, Tennessee going to make homelessness a felony. I mean, all of this stuff, all of this chaos seems to be taking up all of the oxygen, and I think Americans are losing track of what's going on over there. Do you see this? Do you see this ending at some point? How? What? I'm curious your thoughts.
So I think the first thing that everybody listening and all of us as Americans need to do when we see two names on a ballot, we have to ask ourselves: is this person a serious person who's running to do things and would be willing to work with people across the aisle, or not? Or is this person a not serious person who doesn't understand and is just running basically to fill positions for their own, to fulfill their own ego? And we have an election coming up. There's going to be lots of decisions like that on the ballot, up and down the ballot. I think the second thing that we have to recognize is, as it relates to Ukraine, we have a very different world and as a world, we have a serious problem. And that is, we have a butcher who also happens to have a bunch of nuclear weapons, who, is committing genocide and would do that against us. Now, we shouldn't be afraid of that, but much like during the Cold War, can you imagine the response that you've gotten from Ronald Reagan and John Kennedy if there'd been a figure like Tucker Carlson taking Russia's side, Khrushchev's side in the Cold War? I mean, and so we have to recognize that politicians who are not standing with that element that is essentially what has made America great, and quite frankly, the world a little bit better place, neither of them perfect, but far better than it was before. We have to be focused on pushing those people out.
Yeah.
And rallying people together around America. And that's what's made America great. I mean, what made America great is post World War II, how we approach things. And it was, so all of this, well, we got to make America great again. It's just nonsense. And ironically, those people are undermining what has made America great.
So, but it wasn't the bumper stickers, because I thought it was the bumper stickers.
Yeah,
it wasn't the bumper stickers. All right, Trick V, I appreciate the time as always. Great stuff. I hope you'll come back and share some more as this tragedy continues.
Absolutely, anytime, Rick. Just let me know.
Thanks so much, my friend.
All right.
Trick V. Olson. Again, this is scary stuff and angering. Senior advisor over at the Lincoln Project. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. Right back after this. Stick around. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
You know, he makes an interesting point, and it really is. I mean, it comes down to, is the person on the ballot a serious candidate, someone who wants to get things done, or are they a destroyer? You know, I look at someone like Marjorie Three Names. She comes out with the, we're going to tear things down, nothing's going to get done, because they've got no agenda. You know, I look at Madison Cawthorn, hey, I was homeschooled, I don't know anything. I look at these people who, Boebert, what's the agenda? Oh, I don't have agenda. We're gonna make those libs. We're gonna own the libs. That's not an agenda. And I love the way he framed it. They're running to be pundits. You can go be a pundit somewhere else. You can get a job at. There's a ton of right-wing outlets out there. I'm sure they would hire you. I want serious people. I want people who are going to do the job of governing. It seems simple to me. Yeah, and it's something we should all want. Crazy times. Crazy times. Speaking of crazy times, locally in my area, caught this story because I thought it was kind of ironic. It's one of these things that, for every extreme bit, there's a little bit of blowback. Evidently, in our listening area, there is a school district, the Northern York County School District. Had a school board meeting where, evidently, how this story goes, the Northern York Elementary School held a Bible study in the school, and a couple of parents are going, I'm not happy with this. This is not where this should be. So they came and said, hey, we want to have a Satan club. Now, clearly they were not serious, but they brought the proposal before the board, and it was voted down 8-1. And I'm going, wait a second, hold on. Why do we give such preferential treatment to the Christian folks? Now, I wouldn't have gone the Satan route. I wouldn't have. Because that can be easily dismissed as, well, you're just mocking. I would have gone any of the other religions. I would have gone, as I would have gotten a Muslim and say, hey, we want to have a Muslim prayer group. I would have found a Jewish friend and say, hey, we want to have a Jewish group. I would have gone and found a pastafarian. I'd have had a guy come in with a colander in his head, and hey, we want to make pasta and have a big celebration, if that's what pastafarians believe. And I don't pretend to be an expert pastafarian, so please, pastafarians, send me emails, because I would like to know, because maybe I'll join. But this is one of those things where, is the public school where you should be having these things? And the argument being, Christianity gets this kind of preferential treatment, and in public schools, this isn't the place for it. You want to have your thing, do it at home. And this is what the comments were. You want to have your Satan club, do it somewhere else. And this was the point of the organizers, saying, look, if you want to have your Bible study, we encourage that, but go do it somewhere else, not in the local public school. We're supposed to have a wall of separation, which then, as I'm reading through the story, there's another story attached to it about a group of Christians on a plane who they broke out a guitar 30,000 feet in the air, and they're singing religious songs, serenading all the passengers who, I just want to sleep. Shut the blank up. And, I started thinking about it as I was reading some of the comments, and I'm going, that really is an infringement. Now, I usually don't care, about people and their nonsense, but we've given too much to these people because they are imposing their beliefs on the rest of us. Because what if you don't believe? As one person said, I'm an atheist. What if you're an atheist? Again, back to, I have the right to do whatever I want until my rights infringe on yours. And maybe we should start thinking that way, especially with the most obnoxious amongst us. And those are hyper-zealotry class, are hyper-Christians. Just my thought. Love to hear yours. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Hate mail goes to the front. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1920. That was the day remembered in Butte, Montana as Bloody Wednesday, or the Anaconda Road Massacre. Butte was in the heart of copper mining country. By the turn of the century, Butte's population was 25% Irish. The Copper King of Montana was a man named Marcus Daly. He sat at the head of the Anaconda Mining Company. Workers simply called it the company. Hailing himself from Ireland, the County Cavan, the Copper King was known to prefer Irish workers. With the spread of electricity, copper wiring was in high demand. Then World War I grew demand even further, and the company was in the business of delivering that copper with little regard for workers' safety. This disregard resulted in tragedy. A fire in June of 1917 killed 168 workers at the Granite Copper Mine. Miners went out on strike demanding better safety. The company called in federal troops to return the workers to the mines. The industrial workers of the world arrived in Butte to help organize the miners. Unionization efforts were met with armed resistance from the company. Frank Little, an IWW organizer, was hanged from a railroad trestle. No one was held accountable. Finally, on April 19th, the workers had had enough. They went out on strike. 2 days later, hundreds of miners gathered in front of the Neversweet mine on Anaconda Road. They were met by Pinkerton detectives hired by the company. The company gun thugs fired into the crowd of workers, shooting many in the back as they tried to flee. 16 workers were wounded and 1 man died. The strike collapsed a few weeks later. Today's Labor History in 2 brought to you in memory of Carol Hillman, a passionate friend of workers and volunteer of the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
What is so supreme about the Supreme Court? I mean, besides being housed in an imposing marble building, being the final stop on America's judicial train, and having its 9 members look photogenically authoritarian in those full-body black robes. And yes, its existence is written into the Constitution, but so is Congress, and no one thinks of it as anything supreme. We 330 million Americans are told we must obey the law as defined by a half-dozen unelected lawyers on this court. Why should we democratic citizens do that? After all, these legalistic elites have no actual power to force their personal beliefs on us. There's no Supreme Court army. In fact, their sole source of power is one that is intangible, extremely fragile, and easily frittered away: public trust. We should go along with their rulings only if they appear to be fair and honest, not based on personal whim or partisan ideology, and not meant to extend plutocratic power over the people. As Justice Elena Kagan rightly put it, the only way we can get people to do what we think they should do is because people respect us. That's where the present majority of far right-wing appointees have failed so abjectly. Rather than meeting a lofty standard of judiciousness, all 6 have pulled the court down into the mire of crass Republican politics. They've corrupted the system and jiggered the law to decree that corporate campaign cash is free speech, that the state can take over women's bodies, that the Republican Party can unilaterally shut millions of voters out of America's voting booths, and so awful much more that enthrones the few over the many. This is Jim Hightower saying, respect? Trust? The Republican court is already down to 40% public approval rating, having surrendered its legitimacy to be a governing authority over us.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So tonight, the big Democratic Party debate here in my state of Pennsylvania, as John Fetterman, Connor Lamb, and Kenyatta Johnson are having their big powwow, waiting for all of the mudslinging, all of the, well, what comes out of it. And the sad thing is, I fear we're not going to hear the good stuff, the ideas. I fear we're going to hear the nonsense, the attack stuff, the divisive stuff. Instead of, hey, how are we going to move? How are we going to move things forward? How are we going to make workers' lives better? How are we going to make my life better? This is where the Democratic Party should live. How are we going to make lives better? How are we going to help the ham and eggers to make sure that they can put food on the table and keep a roof over people's heads, and not spend so much time on tearing each other apart, and maybe not even so much time of going after how crazy the Republicans are, because look, they're doing it for them. You just have to look and see just how crazy the GOP has gotten. And here to share some thoughts on just how crazy they are, I've asked our good friend Austin Infante to come talk with us. Austin is the multimedia editor and reporter over at Heartland Signal, our friends over at WCPT AM 820 in Chicago. Their website, heartlandsignal.com. Check out the amazing work that they do there. Austin, thanks for taking time for us.
Of course. I always love taking time for you.
So, I'm looking forward to seeing some of the post-debate stuff here in Pennsylvania as the Democrats have their debates. But it's like a lot of things. I fear it's going to be the divisive stuff. Because I guess that's what we want, isn't it? On some level, we want to see people rip each other apart.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I definitely expect Fetterman and Lamb to go at each other's throats the entire time, and just go back and moderators just feeding into like, okay, well, your opponent said this and your opponent said that. Give us something good that we can broadcast, and they're probably going to take the bait, of course. That's how politics is now. But like you said, a lot of the stuff that like holds really well are those bread and butter issues that they can just go to the table, and if Democrats can just, I guess at this point, they just have to fight to get those out there through any sort of means that aren't just like their Twitter or Facebook pages. I think they have very good shots with connecting with the average person.
You got to stay focused. I mean, and let the Republicans do what they're doing to themselves. I mean, I don't think you need to run attack ads. You just have to go, look at Marjorie Three Names. I mean, if you can't look at her and go, there's something wrong there, then there's something wrong with you. But here, I look at in my state of Pennsylvania, there's a guy running for Senate who is, I think not a great candidate, but a hypocrite on top of it. He's attacking Biden's American Rescue Plan. He's attacking the Build Back Better plan. He's attacking everything. Everything's Biden's fault. Yet he's a guy who's profited off of it.
Yeah, definitely. That's Dave White. He's a gubernatorial candidate from Pennsylvania. He's kind of he's been maintaining third place behind Barletta and Mastriano, but he's still kind of up there. And last month at a meet and greet, he basically called the American Rescue Plan terrible and ridiculous and just everything bad about it. Kind of the funny thing about that is the American Rescue Plan, Biden's plan, replenished the Payment Protection Program, which came from the CARES Act, which he himself as a businessman used. So he's basically trashing the funding that he used. And it wasn't just a little bit, it was $1.4 million, over $750,000 to his own company, and then $270,000 to a restaurant he owns down in Ridley Township. He took a lot of money from this, and as soon as he got his money in, he's like, okay, why you all wanting handouts? Like, I don't.
Yeah, I got mine. I got mine.
Yeah, it's very much screw you got mine.
Yeah, hooray for me! It's all bad until I get something. But this kind of is the Republican MO on not just this, but all of these programs. They voted against the transportation bill. They voted against the American Rescue Plan. They voted against all of this stuff. And yet, when they go back home to their district, they'll look how wonderful we are. Look what we've done for you. And sadly, I think a lot of people buy it. Look how wonderful they are. Look what they did, even though they voted against it and have at every turn stood against it. Because after all, if you listen to them, isn't this all socialism and bad for us? And isn't this what caused the inflation? I mean, isn't this part of the what I'm told is causing this massive inflation that we're struggling with?
Yeah, exactly. But they love it when it brings them good things for their areas. I think the biggest example of hypocrisy that there was with Kim Reynolds. She's the one who did the State of the Union response to Biden. She has a long track record of taking credit for American Rescue Plan things. Like almost every month, she'll just go up and talk about like the good that Iowa's coming in and the good that she's doing, when you can very clearly show that like, oh, this is where it came from. And yeah, you brought this up. It doesn't matter as long as you say it first. Much of the time, that's gonna do it. Like anyone else probably won't hear it. They won't get shared that sort of information just because of the bubbles that they're in. But like, yeah, it's just a lot of it is just able to stand because if you say it first, whether or not it's true, it'll just stick.
I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, but what's interesting, and this is the part that I struggle with, when it's for them, it's a good business decision. When it's for anyone else, it's socialism, and it's got to be destroyed because it's killing the country, and it's harming work, and it's causing all this inflation. But when it's for them, hey, when Trump gave away $1.9 trillion in that tax handout to the wealthy, that was fine. When he signed the CARES Act and the $900 billion in pandemic relief money, that was all fine. That was good business decisions. Didn't cause any inflation whatsoever. But Biden goes and gives $1,400 where it should have been $2,000. He goes and gives $1,400. That's the end of humanity. That's too far.
It is way too far to care about our other people.
Just crazy, crazy stuff. Let's move over to across the border into Ohio, where Donald Trump has weighed into it. And I've talked about this for a couple of days now. I am surprised that Donald Trump endorsed J.D. Vance, given the fact that Vance said some pretty mean things about him. Said some mean things about the Donald. Immediately after the endorsement, I said maybe this is a sign of growth for Donald Trump. Maybe this is him becoming more political savvy. Maybe this is him putting away some of the, the narcissism, putting away. I know it sounds really stupid, but hear me out. Maybe this is part of that. Maybe he just, he really wants to influence politically. And then it dawned on me, no, it's got to be something with money. And we now find out Peter Thiel was probably behind the whole thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely wouldn't be surprised. And you've seen, he's already done town halls with this. And basically, the Trump family explained, like, he was against Trump in 2016, but so was everyone else. And he's trying to appeal to, like, the Republicans who end up switching to become pro-Trump. The thing is that that's not exactly what happened. He was, like, he was a never Trumper, but it was to the point where he was saying, like, I can't vote for him. I'm going to vote for Evan McMullen. Or was flirting with the idea of voting for Hillary Clinton. And he didn't just say like, it wasn't just like, oh, I don't like him. His old roommate said like, oh, he might be America's Hitler. Like it was very bad stuff. And I don't think that just from living there, people from Ohio really like integrity. They love someone who can stand by their word and can fully explain it. I don't think he can really fully explain it for these core Trump voters in Ohio.
No. Look, I think a lot of people, and I've said this about the white working class males, they want somebody who's going to fight for them. They want someone who believes that you're going to get up and you're going to fight the fight, even if you're fighting the wrong fight, and that fight is going to hurt them, and it's going to hurt their families. As long as they believe you're fighting, and they don't care what it is, as long as you're in there, mixing it up, they're going to support you. Even if it, like I said, even if it does hurt them, this is one of those things that I think the flip could hurt Vance. Now, what I found interesting is everybody else in the field still playing nice with Trump, putting out tweets of, oh, hey, we didn't get your endorsement yet. When we win the primary, we look forward to you endorsing us down the road. Still kind of kissing his behind, hoping that down the road they can curry favor with him. I guess I found that the most vile.
Yeah, it's funny. So this whole thing was just a race to the right to see how Trump any of the people could be, hopefully to get this sort of endorsement. And I'll tell you right now, I thought Trump was not going to endorse. I thought he was just going to let it play out because that would be just let them handle it. But now, because he endorsed, and especially because he endorsed J.D. Vance, they're coping in very hilarious ways. James Timkins trying to remind people, like, yeah, I didn't get Trump's endorsement this time, but in 2017, I got Trump's endorsement for the state GOP party. Trying to say, like, I was endorsed by Trump technically, which I don't think anyone's going to buy. Mike Gibbons did that polite tweet that you said. Tea Partiers in Ohio, I remember them. They're like openly cursing Trump and saying that they'll vote for DeSantis over this. Josh Mandel, he's kind of like, oh yeah, I'll appreciate his endorsement in the general, but he still has like, I was the first statewide candidate or statewide person to endorse Trump in 2016. That is still in his bio. You can go and check that right now.
Yeah.
And then Matt Dolan, which is the funniest, he's like probably the only never Trumper in there. Even he is still coping a little bit with it because he's like, I enforce Trump policies. I'm just not Trump. So he's trying to not act mad, but is acting a little mad,
a little hurt.
Yeah.
My favorite one though is Josh Mandel. I mean, he's my favorite because he literally got thrown out of a fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago. I think it was Mar-a-Lago. They threw him out of Trump's fundraiser where he went down, and Timken was actually allowed in. He got booted out, and I think I would be angry about that if I were him, and not being and not seeking his endorsement. But, interesting spot where we are. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're here with Austin Linfante. He's a multimedia editor and reporter over at Heartland Signal, heartlandsignal.com, their website. They're our good friends over at AM 820 WCPT in Chicago. Now I want to move over to Nebraska, where evidently we've got some sexual misconduct. Again, very Trumpian kind of stuff, only I think this is being handled maybe a touch differently.
A touch differently in the sense that if you remember from the 2016 debate, Trump talked about actions versus words. The thing that this candidate did, specifically Charles Herbster, the Trump endorsed candidate, this is actions. He's been accused incredibly by 8 different women, including a freshman state senator, Julie Slama, of groping them and like touching them inappropriately. And you can tell just from Senator Slama, it's very, very gross stuff. Basically, he thought he can get away with it just because he's this big, wealthy GOP donor from Nebraska.
Yeah, but isn't that what Trump said? I mean, look, I remember women going, hey, you can grab me by the you-know-what. I remember those T-shirts. Isn't this what conservative women are okay with? Did I miss the message? I thought there was a memo on this. I thought we had the president who said I move on her like a you-know-what, and I grab her by the you-know-what. I thought this was okay.
I would think, yeah, pretty much.
No, I think on the Republican side. No, look, I mean, seriously, I'm being half funny here, but if you were okay with Trump being there, you heard in his words that this is his mentality, and you still supported him. Is this not kind of the message for men in that party to go, this is what women of that party want? I mean, isn't that the messaging?
Yeah, and I definitely, I just sort of like being the whole Trumpism that came out since 2015 of just being like overt. It's like, hey, we can do this. If you don't like it, then you're triggered or something. Ha ha ha. And then they actually go into the real world and do this sort of thing, and then get blasted for it and like have actual accountability, and then are trying to cope with that. And this is what Charles Herbster is trying to do. He's trying to say, oh, that never happened. This is the whole ploy by Governor Pete Ricketts to take me down because I'm an outsider, and no one's going to buy that.
Yeah,
it's not just one person, and it's not even one like notable person. It's 8 women. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot. But here's the thing. I think he would have a better argument of going, no, wait a second. Donald Trump said, So look, I mean, that's the defense on January 6th. Donald Trump said, go ahead, and we did. And that seems to be okay. The party said, January 6th, a patriotic day, because Donald Trump said so. So grabbing her by the you-know-what is, I'm guessing, on the Republican side. Now, I'm not advocating this, so please, no one send me angry emails saying that I think this is okay behavior, because it's not. It absolutely unacceptable on every level, just so that's perfectly clear. But what I am saying is, by supporting Donald Trump, who has said this is what he does, by supporting him and then wearing the t-shirt of, you could grab me by the you-know-what, this kind of sends the message to people in that party that this is okay on a certain level. That's my statement.
Yeah. I think it ultimately comes down to, like, especially with Republicans, they don't really care about the issue until it affects them deeply or affects them personally. I know, for example, Rob Portman here in Ohio, he was anti-gay marriage right up until his son came out as gay, and then he switched over. But he didn't care about he didn't care about the rights of gay people.
Yeah, it's amazing how that happens.
Amazing how that happens.
Yeah, I mean, and the transgender thing. I keep saying the same thing. I don't know anything about it. I'm grateful I don't. I sympathize, I empathize, whatever word you want to throw in there, for people who are dealing with this. I want people to lead their best lives. I want people to, life, liberty, pursue your happiness, all of that stuff. The one thing I am 100% certain on, the one thing I am absolutely positive without question on, is that government should be nowhere near the decision-making process of dealing with these issues. And this is something that conservatives used to believe, that this is a family issue, this is an individual issue, this is something that government should not be anywhere near.
Yeah, it's basic small government principles, which you think Republicans, just by how they came to be, would be for that. But no, they just sort of twisted it just to be completely authoritarian and just kind of, if you're not exactly like us, we're going to throw you under the bus and trying to make your life absolutely miserable until you go away.
Yeah, and the other part of this is, I don't even think they really care about the issue. I really don't. I don't think they care about that. I think that, the people who are doing this, they don't care about abortion. They don't care about gay marriage. They don't care about the issue. They care about the fact that it's divisive. They care about the fact that it riles up the minions in the base so that they get out and vote and spend money and organize around tearing things down, because that ultimately is the goal on the right, is to destroy what little democracy we have left in this country so that they can hand it over to their authoritarian CEO buddies and corporatists so they can run this for a tidy profit, which they've been doing very well for the last 45 years. Thank you very much. But it is what it is. Now let's move over to Michigan, where this state senator, Mallory McMorrow, is getting a lot of attention for a speech she gave. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Mallory McMorrow did an excellent job. One of her Republican colleagues was sending a fundraising email calling her and two other senators groomers, basically for supporting LGBTQ plus rights. And she wasn't having any of that. And she said, I debate on how to do this. And usually the way to do this is like, this is unacceptable, that sort of thing. But she went a bit further, because she brought up as like, I know the reason you're doing this is because you're scaring me and you know you're wrong. And she kind of laid into this Republican senator. It was like, you basically calling her out, saying that she's not going to be on the winning side. And it's basically that sort of like left-wing liberal energy that the Democratic Party needs to get into this. We can't just be defensive throughout all of this. We can't just let this die down. We have to go into this with this massive energy, and just having all these people, because again, like you said, when it comes, like,
you got to call out stupid. You got to call out stupid. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to stand up to the bullies, and you got to call out stupid. And for too long, liberals and Democrats and progressives, they haven't done enough of that. They've tolerated enough. I saw this clip of this Christian group on an airplane at 30,000 feet, singing songs and doing all this stuff and having a high old time. Well, half of the plane wanted no part of that. And again, we as a society tolerate that stuff. Oh, they're just having their, no, they're imposing their rights on the rest of us. And it's not their right to do that. As I say, you have the right to do whatever you want until your right infringes on my right. Then we got a problem.
Yeah, couldn't say it better myself. And like you mentioned earlier, they probably don't care about these issues. These Republicans probably been around transgender people and have gone through fine. But just because it's divisive and just because the very far extreme get really riled up about this, it's good campaign fodder for them, even if it tramples on the rights of other people.
Yeah, now look, as I said, I don't know how, if it were my family, I don't know how I would respond. I don't know what the situation would be, but I do know that them in my life, no. This is something that you would deal with doctors and you would deal with professionals and you would deal with your family and knowing the people involved. This is not a one-size-fits-all ideological religious zealot kind of thing. This is an individual thing, and you stay out. That's just my thoughts on it. But Austin, as always, incredible stuff. I hope you guys keep up the great work there at Heartland Signal, heartlandsignal.com, so you can follow along. Good stuff, man. Appreciate it.
Of course. Always a pleasure being here. Take care.
Good stuff. Our good friend Austin Linfonte. Make sure you check out their website, heartlandsignal.com. He's the multimedia editor and reporter there. Our radio friends over at WCPT AM 820 Chicago. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, rick at thericksmithshow.com. So, I'm stuck on the Herbster story, the groping story, because I think the better defense is not that I didn't do it. I really do. I think he's got to own it. I think he's got to come out. If I were advising him, this is one of those moments. If I were advising him, I think he's got to come out and say, look, I was just doing what women have told me they wanted. What women on my side of the aisle have said is perfectly okay. Because I watched the Trump rallies. I saw them with the, you can grab me by the you-know-what anytime, Mr. President. And I thought it was okay. Now, look, as I said, I'm being audacious. But this was the message in 2016, wasn't it? This is how they poo-pooed away that whole audio tape. This is how they justified his behavior. And it's no wonder that there are these horrible people. It's no wonder. And it's no wonder the elite on both sides. Look, this is not a one-party issue. This is a power issue. This is something when people have power over each other, they abuse it. Which again is why I am a big supporter of labor unions. And look, when there are abuses in labor unions, you got to take those on as well. And I am a supporter of that. We're in a moment where there's we the people are finally sick of the elites. And look, this is at both sides of the political spectrum kind of moment. This is one of those uniting things where, yeah, I'm tired of elite criminals not going to jail. I'm tired of a guy stealing a peppermint patty from 3 peppermint patties, to be fair, sitting in jail for 500 days while someone who tanked our economy and stole billions may be getting house arrest. I'm tired of a system that harms the poor and punishes the working class. Yet, well, our captains of industry, they get off scot-free. This is a moment, folks. It is that moment. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I do want to hear your thoughts on the justification. Hate mail to the front, of course. As always, love that stuff. If you missed any of today's program, the podcast, best way to catch up on everything you've missed, because you never want to miss a second. Because, again, hate mail goes to the front. You're going to want to hear it. And, of course, take me to task. rick@thericksmithshow.com is where you do that podcast, wherever you get your podcast, from iHeart to iTunes, everywhere in between. Thanks for being here.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people